Welcome. Thank you for coming along tonight, especially if some of you are on holiday. So this webinar is run by the IUCN's National Committee UK's Education and Communication Working Group. My name is Sophie Stenson. I'm the chair of the working group, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you all today. So for anyone new to the IUCN CEC, that's the Commission on Education and Communication. As a UK working group, we work alongside the global CEC and its initiatives such as Nature for All, Nature Education for Sustainability, youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships, and reimagine nature communications. So our mission is to strengthen the work of the Union through creative, innovative, participatory, responsive, and effective communication and education as tools to effect positive social and behavioural change for the well-being of people and planet. So one of our main approaches for doing that is creating a network to bring together individuals and organisations that are passionate about nature conservation and facilitate collaboration. So if you are interested in becoming a member of the CEC or any of the other IUCN commissions, individual memberships are completely free, and you can find out more by following the links here. Oh, here we go. By following the links here, or using the QR code. And there's also more information about the working groups on our website if you follow these links. They can also be shared with you via email following the webinar. So this webinar is just one in a series that we've been running over the last year to discuss some of the big topics around nature communication and education in the UK today, through which we've started up multiple collaborations and we've had some fascinating discussions. So this evening is actually the 7th in our webinar series so far. In our previous webinars, we've discussed the importance of conserving conservationists and communication networks for mental health, topics of nature education for sustainability, nature connectedness, youth engagement, and the role of zoos in conservation education. So if any of these topics interest you and you'd like to learn more, you can find the recordings on our website or just by searching IUCN NCUK. And we're also looking forward to our next webinar, which will be in September after a brief summer break through August, where we're going to be hosting Anne Finlayson, who is the Chief Exec of SEED, a sustainability and environmental education organisation I'm sure many of you have heard of. And Anne is an award-winning educator and facilitator with over 30 years of experience from around the world, from environmental teaching to teaching teachers or training teachers and becoming head of education at WWF UK, and many, many more experiences that she will talk to us about. So it's going to be all about her inspiring career progression and the importance of environmental education. So our members will receive invites via email, and if you're interested in signing up for these free webinars, we can also share the links on our social media and LinkedIn pages. So without further ado, we're really looking forward to hearing from our expert speakers tonight about the UK's nature education strategy. We're delighted to host Dr. Laura Soul and Dr. Jade Gunnell from the Natural History Museum and the Department for Education. So the Natural History Museum, which is also an IUCN affiliate member, is leading a partnership to establish the new National Education Nature Park and Climate Action Awards, empowering young people to make a positive difference to both theirs and nature's future. They are working with the Department for Education, and the project aims to make sure that every young person in England has opportunities to develop meaningful connections to nature, and that they understand the concepts of climate change and biodiversity loss and feels able to do something about it. So in this webinar, we're going to hear about the nature park, about what the nature park is, how it fits into the wider activity from the Department for Education, Climate and Sustainability Strategy, and its benefits for young people, and also the community science approach that it will be taken. So we're excited to hear all about it. So over to you, Laura and Jade.
Thanks very much, Sophie. Hi, everybody, and welcome. So I'm just going to switch over to my presentation. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's great. We can see that. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. All right, yeah, so I'm Laura Soul. I work at the Natural History Museum in London, and I'm the Senior Programme and Partnerships Manager working specifically on the Nature Park programme. There are lots of people in the team across a very big partnership, and you'll kind of hear more about several of them later, but I'm joined today by Dr. Jade Gunnell as well, if she'd like to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Jade Gunnell and I'm the Community Science Officer for the National Education Nature Park. So my responsibility is to pull together all of the scientific processes we're going to involve students in for measuring biodiversity change on their sites, and also support for what interventions and changes they can make on their sites.
Thanks, Jade. So we're going to give you a brief overview of the context of the National Education Nature Park and Climate Action Awards, where we're at in the development process at the moment, as well as some of the scientific background to the programme. So the Natural History Museum is the lead partner in this exciting new programme. We're working very closely with the Royal Horticultural Society as the other major delivery partner, as well as a range of other organisations that you can see here on this slide. We've been contracted by the UK Department for Education, and the Nature Park and Awards are a major part of the implementation of the DFE's sustainability and climate change strategy. So it's kind of one strand of the full strategy. The strategy, which is for England only, was launched at the COP26 Global Climate Summit, which was hosted by the UK in Glasgow. And it was really primarily as a response to calls from young people to learn about the climate and biodiversity crises as a core part of their education. Other elements of the strategy that are being delivered separately by the DFE and other providers include things like school climate action plans, sustainability leadership, a new natural history GCSE, as well as work on operations and supply chains. So taking part in the Nature Park and Awards will be a part of helping schools fulfill other parts of the strategy. It's expected that educational establishments in England will have climate action plans in place by 2025, although this will not be mandatory. And these plans are intended to cover 4 key strands, which are decarbonisation, adaptation and resilience. The key one that we're involved in is biodiversity, and then secondarily we're also involved in climate education and green careers. So you can see we sort of fit into this bigger picture. To give some of the broader context, which a lot of you are probably already aware of, the UK is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. There was an independent global review on the economics of biodiversity led by Professor Dasgupta that argues that we have collectively failed to engage with nature. So to act sustainably, there's an urgent need for transformation, and that review highlights the importance of building lifelong connectedness to nature, which was covered at least in part in the last webinar in this series, and also the need to include natural history within a child's educational experience. So this is really important, and education is also being agreed as a theme for the next Global Climate Summit COP28 in November. The combined education estate of England is an area roughly equal to the size of all publicly accessible green space in England, and is the most unrecorded land type for biodiversity. So by taking action across this estate, profound change can happen. We also see this as an investment in the future. We have a shortfall of skilled STEM workers in the UK, with the need for new STEM roles expected to double in the next 10 years, in particular within the green economy. And as we all know, all jobs will need to be green jobs. Building a connection to nature at a young age also means that you're more likely to protect it, and access to green space has been shown to have overwhelmingly positive impacts on physical, mental and emotional well-being of young people, and we hope their parents and teachers too. So hopefully if you joined last month's webinar on nature connectedness and links to well-being, you'll already know a lot about that aspect, and we're really trying to bring that out through this programme. So the main aim of our programme, and this is really with the Nature Park and Awards combined, is for every young person in England to have the opportunity to develop a meaningful connection to nature, to understand the threats that nature and the environment are facing, and importantly, feels able to do something about that. So all research shows that taking action, in particular collectively, is an important approach to combat eco-anxiety, overwhelm, feelings of concern in relation to the environment. So I'll give a bit more of a feel for what the programme as a whole sets out to do, and Jade will give more detail on our community science approach and how it relates to the bigger picture of UK biodiversity and scientific research. So this initiative gives young people the opportunity to lead the way in boosting biodiversity, equipping them with creative, green and digital skills, and enhancing their well-being through an increased connection to nature. And also, we are aiming ultimately to lead to a biodiversity gain across the education estate in England. The park itself will be a vast network of outdoor spaces of nurseries, schools and colleges across England, managed by young people, enabling them to come together to make a positive difference to theirs and nature's future. This area is about 3 million times bigger than the average playground, so as I've said already, it can have a really significant impact. The network will be visualised digitally, with settings able to see their place in it, the data that they and others have collected, and they'll be able to track their progress and the progress of other settings on a national map. A range of digital and geospatial mapping tools is going to be freely available as part of the programme. Through mapping, monitoring and enhancing their learning sites for nature, young people will be taking part in real scientific research on biodiversity and nature recovery, building skills and building connection to nature. Alongside the skill building activities and learning through digital mapping, we'll be providing quality assured curriculum link resources across a really wide range of subject areas that can be used to flexibly deliver nature and climate education within the English National Curriculum programmes of study. All the educational resources and support will be completely free to use, and grants totaling 15 million over 2 years will be available from the Department for Education for around 1,200 of the most nature-deprived education settings in disadvantaged areas. So just to chat through in a little bit more detail those kind of key strands that we've outlined, the nature park itself, as I've said, all nursery schools and colleges in England will be invited to join. Young people will take the lead in mapping their school space in different ways depending on their stage of learning and development. Jade will say more about this. They'll monitor what's living and growing on their site, and they'll also learn about how it's used and how fellow students feel about different parts of the site and interact with it. All these data will be added to the nationwide database, and then young people will make collective decisions based on analysing the information in combination with scientific evidence to understand opportunities to improve their site for plants, wildlife and people. So along with biodiversity monitoring, mapping and data analysis, they can learn digital and working scientifically skills, kind of underpinned by a strong foundation in numeracy, as well as bringing in creativity, collaboration and resilience. So all these skills are going to be very important for the transition to net zero, along with meeting wider environmental goals. Importantly, young people will be able to recognise their role in the process and how they can and have contributed, no matter what their skills and interests are. We've intentionally created a programme where the initial steps are straightforward and can result in quick benefits, and also that provides a clear pathway to build confidence in young people over time. The guidance we'll be providing will support settings to make changes in a way that embeds the programme sustainably. Small actions taken over time can have a big impact on nature and on young people at a school, and in the same way, small actions taken by thousands of sites across the country that have become part of the Nature Park network will combine to have a massive impact for nature. So a bit more about what we've been up to so far. To ensure the programme is developed by and for young people, our programme partners Royal Horticultural Society and Learning Through Landscapes have completed 6 months of piloting with 40 early years primary and secondary settings, including those who have very little access to outdoor space. So by the end of this month, so today, 3,025 young people will have participated in testing 28 activities with 116 teachers and practitioners from the sessions, submitting feedback. A further 20 schools are working with another project partner, Royal Geographical Society, to support development of Nature Park digital elements. This process of testing and iterative development will continue throughout the life of the programme, allowing us to be responsive to school needs and ongoing input from young people. Through the Pathfinder process, we've identified key skills, green skills and knowledge, and created activities that support young people to master those skills over time. We've worked very closely with educators to understand how best to provide them with the information, support and connections to successfully facilitate nature park activities in their educational setting. Partnership regional support officers are working in the North West and West Midlands at the moment, and this will expand to other areas over time and help to connect nature park schools to one another, as well as other organisations in their local community who can support them. To access all aspects of the programme, there will be a digital hub for educators. This includes access to all the free digital tools, activity guides, implementation support, quality assured curriculum resources, as well as things like webinars, videos and other teaching tools. A key element of the programme is that using digital mapping apps, children and young people will be able to map the habitats and biodiversity of their education setting and see how it changes over time, as well as see the activity of other schools around the country and visualise and analyse that data. Esri UK has been awarded the contract by the Department for Education to deliver the geospatial mapping for Nature Park. They provide already through their schools programme, all schools with free access to ArcGIS Online, which is their cloud-based mapping platform, and many schools and colleges already make use of that technology, so they're able to expand that. If you are interested in seeing some test example apps and learning more about a Pathfinder event that we ran in May, you can follow that QR code that's on the screen at the moment. Those are kind of test apps. The final versions we'll sort of talk more about later. Jade can now tell you a bit more about how these digital tools support the scientific aims of the programme.
Thanks, Laura. So community science is really at the heart of this programme in terms of how are we going to help young people and schools work out where their starting point is, what things they might be able to do, and then monitor the impact that they have. And so the first thing to kind of check in on is, well, what is community science? I think some of you most certainly will have heard of citizen science, and community science and citizen science are essentially the same concept, but just framed in different ways. And really, community science and citizen science are real scientific research that is conducted by communities in partnership with professional scientists. So we're talking about non-scientists and professional scientists collaborating around research questions in a research process. And this is what we're intending to do with all of the young people and schools involved in the nature park and our research teams, both at the NHM, but also some of our other partners as well. And there are a multitude of benefits to community science. I could talk for a whole hour plus about what all the different benefits are, but I think some of the top key benefits for us on the nature park of a community science approach are as follows. So firstly, community science enables big data collection. So because we'll be engaging as many schools across England as possible, that's a lot of young people and their teachers and other educators that work with them who are able to go and collect biodiversity, habitat data that can all go into a centralized database and be accessible by researchers across the UK and around the world. And of course, we know that big data is one of the most powerful tools that we've got in answering some of those large global questions about, okay, well, what is the state of nature? Why is it declining? How do we improve it? So that's one of the top scientific benefits of taking this approach. We've also got the benefit of public participation in science. So community science is a way in which we can help non-scientists delve deeper and deeper and deeper into what is this scientific process. So we can take that black box of science that in popular culture, a lot of people aren't confident about what that is. And by bringing them into the scientific process, we can help them learn what the process is, what are its limitations, what are its opportunities, how can we use scientific data in order to create solutions. And they therefore develop the skills of science, but also a better understanding of how can they interpret and make sense of the science that they're exposed to in their day-to-day lives in other settings, like what's on the news or what's in the news media or what they're learning in other places. I think a really important benefit of community science that is often overlooked is how valuable it is in harnessing local knowledge. There's been for a long time this conflict between kind of expert knowledge and lay knowledge, but there is increasing evidence that when you actually incorporate the so-called lay knowledge into your scientific analysis and interpretation, you actually get a ground truthing of your data. That means your interpretation of your data actually has a greater resonance and relevance for creating solutions and change on the ground, and solutions that are long lasting and actually have impact. Often when you don't incorporate that local knowledge, you don't get the levels of impact we might expect. And so for us in the nature park, you know, nobody knows a school site better than the kids and teachers and other members of staff who are on that site every single day. And they're also closer, so we can help them investigate it in a deeper level and share that knowledge and that wealth of understanding that they gain as a result. And then finally, and I think for me, almost most importantly, is the way that engaging in a community science process empowers communities. So once you start to put the ownership of the data and the science into the hands of people, and then give them the processes and mechanisms and support to turn that data into action and change, they can then start to fly in terms of addressing and creating solutions to the problems that they face. And of course, sometimes that can be really localized, or in our context, we're thinking about national and even the global issue of biodiversity loss and climate change. They can start to have a really solid impact, and they can feel the agency to be able to do that. Next slide, please, Laura. So we're talking about real science research, and three key themes that we have when we're thinking about the research in this programme are biodiversity gain, climate resilience, and sort of overarching those, this broader idea of nature recovery and how we go about that. So in the programme, we're going to ask schools and support schools to map the habitats that are on their site, and then carry out quality assessments of those so that we can start to get an understanding of the richness or absence of different types of habitat and space in these settings. And of course, one of the challenges of the programme is we're expecting a huge diversity of what schools have, and that's important for us to know. How diverse is that educational estate? From there, we're then going to support schools in making decisions about what types of action that they can take and interventions they can make to increase biodiversity, but also to increase climate resilience where possible. And then beyond that, we're going to get them to do longer term monitoring of biodiversity and climate factors on their sites. All of the data that they're collecting, so all of those different types of data I've just said, will be fed into a centralised database for the park, and that's being developed by our technology partner Esri that Laura just mentioned. And once that's all in a centralised database, the schools will be able to access not just their own data, but data from across the whole park. And they'll be able to use that alongside peer-reviewed evidence that we'll find lots of different ways for them to access. And they can use this to inform the decisions that they make about what they do to their sites, but also to track their progress in terms of increasing biodiversity and having impact, and also understand from year to year what is the kind of quality and status of their site at that point in time. Beyond this, that data will also then be used by our Natural History Museum researchers who are going to study it and run data models. We've got a team called Predict that do a large-scale data modelling for land use change. And they're going to use this data to predict and understand how changes in land cover and habitat have beneficial or detrimental impacts on wildlife and climate resilience. We're also anticipating that the data will be able to be used by researchers outside of the Natural History Museum, and certainly we're working really hard to make sure that the data young people collect is comparable to and can speak to more professional data sets that are being collected that are informing policy at the national level. Yeah, I think next slide, please, Laura. So to go into a little bit more detail about the actual kind of community science process we're going to take them through. At the moment, we're really heavily focused on the habitat mapping process, because this is the first thing that we're going to be asking schools to do when they, once they've joined up and registered and done some nature connectedness activities and experiences and started to get more confidence in being out in nature, because some schools, even with outdoor spaces, do not spend a lot of time outdoors and do not have confidence in doing that. Once they've started to find their feet, the first kind of scientific process we're going to invite them to do is the habitat mapping. On the right hand side, you'll see an image of a prototype for the mapping tool. We've developed a little bit further from this image so far. But what we're essentially going to ask them to do is go and survey their site and on a map draw polygons and lines and points for different types of habitat categories and features. We have created a list of habitat categories that we've developed from the UK Habitats Directive, but also from, just fallen out of my head, the urban greening factor as well. And we've combined those to make sure that the habitat categories that the students are recording, we can map them against the professional habitat schemas, so that data can speak to or statistics can be used to make those two data sets speak to each other, so that the students' data can be incorporated and used outside of the kind of education sector. They're going to be mapping a range of natural but also man-made or human-made surfaces and features, so the urban as well as the sort of green spaces on their sites. And once they've got a really solid kind of foundational map of their site, we'll then take them through the process and support them through doing quality assessments. We're not going to ask them to do habitat quality assessments for the whole site in one, because that's a lot to ask. And we're going to invite them to pick a particular type of habitat that they want to work on, and we'll get them and support them in doing a habitat quality assessment of that. And that will part of the purpose of that is to give them a proxy. We're going to be using those quality assessments as proxies for what the biodiversity situation might be in as a starting point. And then we're going to build in a program of community science surveys, which will be, we're going to curate some of it. So we're going to draw on the best of what's already out there. At no point reinventing the wheel. There's some really well tested, well established surveys already there. We want to bring them into the program and support that wider national data collection. But then we're also, where there's gaps and we think there's really important biodiversity data that needs to be collected, and there aren't surveys suitable for young people, we'll be developing them from scratch as well. Next slide, please, Laura. And then once, so that's the kind of data collection, so we can monitor change and understand the status of sites and give them a chance to track their progress and also influence the scientific research. But the ultimate purpose and goal of this programme is to help schools enhance their green spaces, both for wildlife and for themselves. And so one of the big pieces of work that we're doing and we've started working on is creating packages of resources that support schools in picking interventions that are suitable for their site and will have some impact, and working out where's the best place on their site to put those, not just in terms of how it connects to other parts of the community, like beyond the school boundary, but also we can't turn every school playing field into a nature reserve. There are other use cases for these spaces, so how do they pick the right place for that intervention that doesn't take away from their need for sports and free playtime and all of that kind of thing. We've decided to take a habitats focus to the structure of the kind of scientific and interventions program, and this is for two reasons. One is that we know through nature recovery and conservation science that taking a landscape level and habitats level approach and focus and perspective brings the best results in terms of impact and nature and biodiversity gain. But also we felt it was a really big and important learning opportunity, education opportunity to get young people from a young age thinking about nature in terms of its interconnectedness and ecosystem functioning, rather than specific species or a specific, like you could put a bird box in your garden and that creates a home for a bird. We want them to think about more of the interconnections and the multiple factors that need to be in place to support biodiversity. Of course, all of this process is going to be developing digital skills through mapping, social skills through the deliberation and the processes they need to go in terms of deciding where their interventions go, and then the actual green skills of learning identification skills and understanding habitats, and then actually putting these things in place. And all of this really is about supporting young people and giving them the skills to lead this process. We want, once this gets up and running, we want the kids to be driving this in their schools and leading it more than their teachers. But also that, of course, this is so important for equipping them for the future, where we know biodiversity is becoming increasingly sensitive, and the future that they face as adults. And I'll pass back to Laura. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jade. So there are obviously kind of lots of aspects and opportunities for data collection and learning and all of these kinds of things, and use of the apps and the digital skills that Jade's described. But recognizing that different educational settings that work with different age young people or have different levels of experience or confidence with these things will be at very different starting points. We're looking at how do we make this as easy as possible to kind of get started with, and building up confidence over time. We see this as a long-term program. So I'll just say a little bit more about what it might look like for a setting to take part, and the kind of guidance or pathway through that we're offering through the digital hub. So the nature park process will always be led by young people and begins with understanding this question, where are you now? So kind of lots of the different tools or pieces of information that Jade has described, but essentially assessing the current situation of the education site and its community. So this could include simply utilising activities to help young people feel comfortable in the outdoors and develop an interest in nature, building towards them getting out there and finding out what habitats are present on the school site, and using these digital tools to record them, as well as looking at how different parts of the school are used, what nature is present, and as well what the important kind of environmental issues are locally by connecting with other members of the community. The next step is then young people using that information gathered to creatively and collaboratively decide the changes they want to make for people and nature, using all of the information that kind of Jade has described, as well as all of that they've collected on their own site, followed by making a plan and getting all the right people on board within their school community to make sure that that plan is actually possible. Next, it's time for the young people to take action and make changes. So focused on enhancing the site, as Jade was describing, and doing that together. So this idea of collective action, followed by returning to monitor what they've done to see the difference that they've made. So really being able to understand that impact that they've had, and then beginning this cycle again. So the information drawn into this creative decision-making and action process can be really varied. It's not just about the scientific data. And it can absolutely sort of be scaled up over time as schools build their maps and build their confidence with the programme. So this approach provides opportunities for young people with lots of different skills and interests to contribute. So for example, young people with a future in photojournalism can record change and tell a story of their nature park sites. For those who might have a future in design, they can come up with purposeful solutions to the school's challenges. For those who are interested in campaigning, they can advocate to the school community for the change they'd like to see. And for those who do see themselves with a future in science, they can ask questions and collect biodiversity data. There are many more futures young people could try out for themselves through the nature park, and this collective action and contribution of many different types of skills is what can generate change. So alongside all of these materials and digital tools we've spoken about that will support that process, we're bringing together a broader suite of quality assured national curriculum linked resources from respected providers. So this is from lots of different organisations, because there's already a lot of great work going on in this area. In combination, these resources will support the teaching of an ambitious, high quality biodiversity and climate curriculum that's aligned with the current national curriculum programmes of study in England. Our aim is to ensure that the curriculum resources we develop support student voice and student-led inquiry, promoting a participatory approach to learning that aligns with the Nature Park approach overall. So we've been working with climate education experts to ensure that the materials we provide are led by evidence-informed approaches to climate pedagogy, as well as being in line with the latest evidence on climate science. And we're working with the Royal Meteorological Society to quality control that. Understanding and connecting with nature can be an accessible starting point for engaging with information, quite complex information on the joint biodiversity and climate crises, which are intrinsically linked to each other. And our focus really with these curriculum resources and how we show how the nature park can be delivered in different ways is on communicating the substantive and disciplinary knowledge related to the nature park content, as well as different ways schools and young people can take collective action, including showcasing things like nature-based solutions. And finally, there's a focus on well-being, resilience, and positive relationship with nature. So we've kind of got these three strands that come out through the curriculum progression: knowledge, collective action, and resilience. So through that kind of approach I've just described and the Climate Action Awards, we're really looking to support settings to understand and be motivated to kind of continue through the programme, to take on new challenges, to do it at their own pace, to incorporate it flexibly in a way that works for them. And these kind of activity plans and lessons can be delivered in many different ways. The Climate Action Awards that we've sort of mentioned previously will be led by the Royal Society, who are another key project partner. The awards themselves will recognise educational settings who have brought about change at an institutional level. So it's a whole setting, whole school or whole nursery award. So bringing about change to support their students in developing green skills, championing nature, and working towards a sustainable future. So this includes recognition of a lot of the excellent work that is already underway in many education settings through existing awards and schemes that can be built on over time. There'll be several levels within the Climate Action Awards that recognise progression. So some of the examples of the kinds of things that contribute to different levels of the award are recognising climate issues and sustainability issues within the school, making links with these themes across the whole school curriculum, young people gathering evidence by carrying out experiments, practical work or field work, and working with the local community, including other schools, businesses or universities and others, to improve the local environment. So this is really kind of providing a framework for progression that motivates, inspires different educational settings to go further. The award scheme will open in spring next year. So just to wrap up, we will be launching in October this year. So please do share the Nature Park and Awards webpage with anyone that you know who is working in England educational settings to raise awareness of the launch this year. If you want to, you can sign up to our current newsletter for updates about the programme using the QR code on the screen. And when we finish talking, we can share the link in the chat if people want it as well. Just to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us today and listen. And I think we have some time for questions now, if anybody has them. I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks so much, Laura and Jade. That's fantastic. It's such an exciting programme to learn about, and there's already some great discussions that have been started in the chat box. So definitely some questions lined up already. I can see I'll try my best to get to them all in order, but if anyone would like to put their hand up as well to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. And I will try and scroll back to some of the first few now. So I can see that Evie has her hand up.
Hi, yeah, I just thought that was sounds like a really great scheme. I know you mentioned that you'll be rolling it out in particular, focusing on disenfranchised areas. I was wondering what these areas are, when the grants might open, and I was also really interested in hearing about like who you thought might be applying for these grants, and then who would be delivering these. Would it be something that you think like the teachers would do? Would they work with an outside like partner organization? I'm just sort of wondering. I know that a lot of teachers are really like strapped for time. Are you imagining this would be like run as with a partner organization or something that the teachers are running themselves?
So there is a specific list of settings that are eligible to apply for the grants, and that is now available online for anybody who wants to go have a look. The process of selecting those particular settings was a combination of things like access to nature and priority levelling up areas and disadvantage, as we mentioned. Those settings will all be specifically invited to apply, and we will be, as a partnership, and in particular through the RHS, providing support as we're able to support schools to understand how to apply for the grants, what information they should be using, and how it kind of links in with nature park activity. But there will be more information available about that specifically for those settings that are eligible when the nature park goes live in autumn.
That's great, thank you. Sorry, I was just waiting to see if any other hands pop up. But I'm scrolling through the chat now. I can see that Andy has a question.
Yeah, hi, I'm here as an interloper from the west coast of Wales, but really interested in what's going on in England. And I put a question in there, and I'm well aware of Miles's work, which I think is excellent and adding a huge amount to the game. But one of the things that we're noticing here is that in that with the level of disconnection that's going on, we're nowhere near kind of maximizing the benefit that nature connection can have for parents or pupils, even at kind of quite a fundamental level. And I'm just wondering what opportunities there might be, if they haven't started yet, to formally engage health boards to say, if you're working with, I guess it's like 1 in 20 primary schools or something like that ish in England. It's potentially quite a significant trial to show actually this is the level of shift that nature connection can make for pupils and families, in terms of how that portrays and how that portrays itself at a community level through mental health, etc.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and it sounds like something we should follow up with you on to think about how that might work. We are looking at so through the regional support officers for the programme, we're looking at how we connect with organisations on the ground, a variety of different types of organisations, and how we can kind of use those links at a local level to work with them to look at kind of information that's helpful for us and helpful for them. I should also say that there is an evaluator that it's separate from us. The DfE have engaged them, a consortium to evaluate both what we're working on and other elements of the strategy, and part of that is looking at well-being of young people, so they're kind of working through the approach now. So I do think yeah, you're absolutely right, it's a key area to understand better, and sort of a real opportunity depending on how we are able to scale this up. So yeah, I think it would be great to follow up with you. Thanks.
Definitely. And if anyone misses out on any contacts whilst we're here as well, we're happy to put everyone in touch later on as well. Ross? Oh, I think you're still muted, Ross.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. Just to say, start off with a fantastic presentation. Very much enjoyed it. So thank you very much indeed. I'm coming at this particular topic from the perspective of having completed a PhD concerning children's literature and representations of environmental issues in children's literature at Cambridge. And I'm intrigued in terms of the cross-curricular links. There seems to be a strong emphasis on science here, and I'm just thinking, as a teacher myself and as a head of English, how those cross-curricular links are being implemented and the practicality of applying this in terms of, would this be a program that would take part in humanities/science lessons within the primary context, or would it be something that is taught and delivered outside of the school timetable?
Thanks, Ross. Great questions. So I think maybe say partly the emphasis of our presentation on the science is because of us being the NHM, and also because of the audience today and where we thought people would be interested in kind of conservation aspects. You're absolutely correct, sort of like there is quite a large scientific element, but the curriculum resources that I mentioned, and also that kind of the process of the park itself, we are working very hard to make sure that the way that a educational setting engages with it is not as a science project, that it is as a holistic approach that brings in lots of different kind of subject specific pedagogies, allows opportunities for young people to engage with it in different ways, and we're working with key partners to develop resources that are subject specific, as well as those that do kind of bring in different elements, particularly at obviously that like the early years and primary levels, where the curriculum's a bit more flexible. If you want to drop us a note, we can have a chat with you about the different partners that we're working with. I mean, we've got a few different ones that we're looking at English resources in particular, bringing in literacy, poetry, and kind of thinking about how young people engage with the site and discuss how they feel about it. There are lots of kind of key ways that we're bringing those other things in. When the program goes live, most of the resources will be kind of linked to the science, geography and citizenship PSHE curricula. But we have a program to expand that throughout the life of the project, working really collaboratively with subject specialists and other organisations to make sure that are really high quality resources that are fit for purpose to deliver national curriculum learning outcomes at the same time as helping young people kind of go through this creative collective action process that supports them in the park. I mean, at least partly we know that, you know, schools can't engage with this unless we're providing something that does fit really seamlessly into what they already do. So we have lots of different options of ways that they can deliver it. We're really hoping that it does come through curriculum time and become sort of part of business as usual. But there are sort of lots of different flexible ways that it could be done, and we don't want to be too rigid. So we allow a lot of opportunity for different settings to take part in a way that makes sense to them. Jade, did you want to add anything? I can see you've gone.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. You know, we've had really direct experiences with our Pathfinder schools where it's been, I mean, we knew it already, but it came up very explicitly from some of the kids that they felt, because we were testing some of the science activities with them, some of the kids were saying, I don't like science. Science isn't my thing. This isn't for me. So we know just how important it is, because whether you're into science or not, the environmental issues and the climate challenges that we're facing affect us all. So we need to find ways to help everybody, regardless of their interests and their skills and abilities, to engage with this and find a meaningful contribution they can make. And I think for me, in terms of that direct action, we've got huge opportunity in that we know in order to create real change around environmental issues, we don't just need scientists and we don't just need conservationists. We also need politicians and communicators and artists and writers and musicians and everything else, and engineers and everything else that comes along. So the way we're going to build the kind of interventions and action process is about we've talked a lot about having different roles and characters that the kids can take on board based on their skills and their interests, that they can make a meaningful contribution. And that's so, so important to us, because this is about so much more than science. This is about like our future, their future.
Well, thank you. It's fantastic to hear. I'm actually being charged by my school with the responsibility of building on my PhD research and actually designing a program of study to be delivered to Year 7 and Year 8 students. So it'd be fantastic to collaborate. I'm already meeting up with the learning manager at the WWT, because I'm actually in Surrey, so I'm a stone's throw away. So it'd be fantastic to get you on board as well, having been to a couple of trips to the Natural History Museum myself. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think it's so, the interdisciplinary aspect of it is so important. So it's great to hear that that's all being taken into account. I can see Chris waving.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
I've lost my hand symbol, so I've used my real ones instead. A couple of things to say. I work in the independent sector, and many independent schools have very extensive grounds. And like us, we have a nature reserve, which we're quite happy to share with other schools. As I said in the notes, we've just had the whole site assessed by FERA under their Land 360 project, which has given us a complete carbon outline for the whole site. A second thing I wanted to say is, back in the village, we have 2 wildlife sites, a pond and a meadow, and a primary school. And we would like to work with the primary school. We also have a big housing development. And as I also put, all housing developments have to lay land aside for wildlife gain, and they have to have an ecology plan. And our local school is keen to work with the field that's been set aside, but it needs, firstly, a good parish council clerk to persuade the contractors who turn up with mowers and strimmers to actually stick to the ecology plan, which has been agreed beforehand. So these are other issues going on round about the school grounds issue as well.
Thanks for that, Chris. I think a couple of things to say there. Firstly, we are really keen to collect up case studies from different schools, so that we can show to schools that haven't yet done anything like this what the opportunities are, and to demonstrate proof of concept to them. But a call out to everybody is we're looking for case studies, not just from schools with huge sites and lots of space, but also schools that are a lot more restricted, and particularly schools where there's just grey space, because we think one of the biggest challenges is going to be for schools that do not have any sort of green space within their school boundary. And how do we really inspire them that this is also for them? And we're structuring the programme very much so that they can easily participate from the beginning. One thing to clarify is that for the nature park, all of the engagement is engagement that needs to take place within the school boundary as a part of the funding of the programme. So certainly in the current funding period, we won't be working up and supporting resource and activity that takes place outside the boundary, although we would encourage all schools, if they're feeling equipped and empowered to do that, that they would go ahead and do that anyway. And we're certainly ambitious that and we already have case studies of schools before the program's even started, where once they get started on this journey, before long they're working with the parish councils in the local village to make great things happen. So we'd certainly encourage that. So yeah, it'd be great, I think, to exchange emails so we can follow up with you about your experiences so far, Chris, and pick some of that up.
That all sounds fantastic. So I am wary of the time that we're getting towards 7 o'clock. I don't know if there are any more desperate last minute questions that we might be able to fit in. But if I don't see any hands go up, then we might have to wrap it up there. As previously mentioned, we would be happy to share the chat, which gets recorded with you all, so that you can have a chance to add each other and stay in contact and not miss any of the valuable links that have been shared there. So I'll just give a second if anyone wants to put their hands up. I think that might be us. So thank you so much, Laura and Jade, for talking to us about this really important topic tonight. I think it's been a fantastic presentation, and there's so much enthusiasm that's come through in the chat. So it's clear, you know, how many people want to get in touch about this and really push this forward. So it's really exciting stuff. So for looking forwards, we are planning future webinars, and the next of which is currently planned for the end of September with Anne Finlayson from SEED. So keep your eyes peeled for updates on our socials and LinkedIn. And we're also open to any suggestions for future topics as well. Or if you've got a topic that you'd like to present as a speaker, or you can get in contact about collaboration opportunities, please feel free to do so. Alternatively, if you are watching this as a recording, then please do get in contact or comment below any topics which you would like us to focus on in future webinars. So thank you all for attending this webinar. We appreciate your time and input, and thank you again to Laura and Jade for presenting. You can learn about any upcoming webinars, any other updates, as I said, by following us on social media at IUCN NCUK. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.